Sometimes you gotta shoot a hostage. Hello, my name is Will, this is Exploding Helicopter, and we are 8 minutes from bingo. With the Oscar-laden Dancing with Wolves, Kevin Costner made a big splash in the Hollywood pond. Then, over the next few years, he surfed a tidal wave of critical and commercial success until nearly sinking his career with the cinematic belly flop Waterworld. With that film's title now a cautionary byword for excess and folly, you'd have thought Tinseltown producers would have been wary of bankrolling any project that placed Big Kev anywhere near a bucket of water, never mind an entire ocean of the stuff. But, proving once again that Hollywood is a town where nobody knows anything, incredibly somebody decided to chuck $70 million at Costner to make a tale of heroism on the high seas. So the film we're reviewing is the 2006 coastguard drama The Guardian. To help me review the film, I'm joined by a man who's always hopelessly out of his depth. He's not waving, but drowning. It's Barry from the Tru Bromance Podcast. Welcome back to the show, Barry.
Oh, thanks for having me, Will. That's a very accurate description. And I'm going to have to take just 1 second and, your blasphemy against the great film that is Waterworld. I don't care how it's received. That movie is, it's an unrediscovered classic. Like, that thing is quite good, and people need to reassess Waterworld. It's top notch in my opinion.
Well, I think if I've learnt anything from being interested in following popular culture over the last 30 years, that, if you if something is denigrated enough, sure enough, after 10, 20, 30 years, there'll be people out there who's saying, you know what, we should go back and reevaluate this. So if you leave it long enough, it'll come like some sort of horrific cultural boomerang. It'll come back into popularity.
I'm really hoping that the people start giving Waterworld its respect that it deserves. I mean, he's a fish man. Like, who cannot get behind Kevin Costner as a fish man?
Well, we are going to be talking about Kevin Costner on this show, and when I was thinking about doing it, I was keen. There was really only one place I was going to go, and that was to the Tru Bromance Podcast for a guest for this particular episode. Because if your show is known for anything, it's for its love of Kevin Costner. So, what is it about the man that makes you such a fan?
I had a feeling this was going to come up, so I was trying to think of an analogy that could work. And I don't know, do you guys eat peanut butter over in the UK very often?
We do have peanut butter here, yeah.
You do have peanut butter. So Kevin Costner is like peanut butter. Like, he's always peanut butter. You can put him in, you can put him in chili, you can put him on toast, you can put him, like on bread, like he goes well with chocolate, and he just makes almost everything better. Like, he's always the same thing. There's whether it's The Guardian, The Untouchables, Waterworld, like, he's always Kevin Costner, but he always makes it a little bit better. So, like, he's just, I've never seen someone be able to be the best one-note wonder of all time, but still work amazingly. Like, he's just fantastic. Like, it's the look, it's the way he acts, but it's always Kevin Costner, but it's always like, you're never like, that's terrible. He's always pretty good. It's magical. I don't know what it is.
Do you feel like you get different varieties of Kevin Costner? I mean, do you get crunchy nut Kevin Costner in some films, and maybe like natural oils only peanut butter
like a sugar-free version? I think it does spread around a little bit. There's definitely like a slightly worse version of peanut butter every now and then, but it's always pretty much the same taste and consistency, just a little variation. Like, I think he just gets older. Like, he's that old jar that you found in the back. Oh, it's still good because it's peanut butter. Like, he's still, I bought this in 1981, but it's still okay because what could really go wrong? It's just crushed up nuts.
Well, we all know, Kevin Costner's big movies: Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Untouchable, Wyatt Earp. I mean, the man's got a very impressive CV of hits out there. But what I wanted to ask you, as you're a fan and an aficionado, is to, can you give me a deep cut from the Costner CV, something that's a little bit off the radar, but that's still quality Kev?
There's two that I think I would recommend and that I really like. The first one is called Silverado. Have you heard of Silverado?
I have, but I've never actually got round to seeing it, even though I know it's meant to be very good.
You should really check it out. It's from the mid '80s, the greatest decade of film that we've ever had, and Kevin Costner's in it. But it's really quite a robust cast. Kevin Kline's in it, Danny Glover, Scott Glenn. So there's quite a few other, but he plays a fairly main role, and it's young, brash, kind of he's just opening up the engines of Kevin Costner and letting it run. Like, it's quite fun. I enjoy it quite a bit. And then another one that's more kind of a vehicle for him is called Revenge. It's a little
That's
bit
got a
later in
pretty
the
bad
80s.
reputation.
I kind of like Revenge. I think it's one of those ones. I mean, it's a very, basic story. Like we've seen it before. The rich, angry, cheated on husband, takes out everyone's aggressions because his wife steps out. Of course, it's with Kevin Costner, who's quite the handsome fellow. I personally like that one again, but maybe that's just my affinity for Kevin Costner, where I can, it's always the rosy shades of Kevin Costner. I have a hard time admonishing any of his work, I think.
Well, I'm quite partial to a bit of Costner myself, and there are a couple of films of his that I think do fly a little bit under the radar, which I think are worthy of checking out. I don't know if you've ever seen a film that he did called Mr. Brooks.
I have seen Mr. Brooks. I actually saw. I like Mr. Brooks is another one. That's Dane Cook's also on that one. That's hard to overlook. Mr. Brooks, actually, that's another good one. I was trying to go back early when I was looking up his films to thank some, but I like Mr. Brooks quite a bit too. That's a very good one as well.
And it's quite unusual because in that film he's actually playing a serial killer, and that's not something we get terribly often from Kevin Costner. I think that might actually be the only time he's the villain. I mean, I can't think of too many other films where he's been a bad guy.
No, you might be right. I mean, like it's one of the few for sure. Like, and he's straight up pretty evil. Now, I do like Mr. Brooks. That's a really good example too. Like, I would highly recommend that one as well. I do. Like I said, looking back through his thing, I think I've seen everything he's done minus like some of the modern TV stuff, sort of like the cable access sort of shows. I've seen everything, and like I said, for the most part, at least enjoyed it to a degree. So I like that Mr. Brooks as well. That's a good recommendation as well, Will.
Okay, well let's get stuck into the Kevin Costner vehicle that we're talking about on this show. So let's talk about The Guardian, but before that, let's cue the trailer.
There's an instructor opening at A school.
No, I'm not interested.
You can't always be the one in the water, Ben. I need you to train the next generation.
That guy who holds all them records? So you ought to let him know I'm about to knock his name off that board.
Maybe you should let him know yourself. He's standing in the back of the room.
Why don't you do us both a favor and quit?
I want to apologize about what I said earlier. Thought there might be some things you'd like to apologize for.
Why?
Check it out. She's staring at you. She's not. You gotta make a move.
I can't.
I get nervous. You want to jump out of helicopters, but you're afraid to go talk to a girl. Pretty much, yeah.
Who here can tell me the rescue swimmer's motto?
So others may live, Senior Chief!
Oh, I feel safer already.
Who is this guy?
He's a legend. He's got something like 200 saves.
He's such a stud. What's he doing here?
There will come a time when you might have to decide who lives and who dies.
Think I'm ready for this?
Go!
Big Kev plays Randall, a legendary rescue swimmer with the US Coast Guard. Haunted by the death of his friend during a dangerous rescue, he's forced to take a gig at the Coast Guard training school whilst he regains his sea rescuing mojo. At the school, Kevin has to whip a class of new recruits into shape, including cocky high school swim champ Ashton Kutcher, who is similarly hamstrung by personal tragedy. Can both men let go of the grief that's holding them back? Can they achieve their coastguarding dreams? Alongside Costner and Kutcher, we have John Hurd, Clancy Brown, and Neil McDonough. The Guardian was directed by action movie veteran Andrew Davis, who made The Fugitive, Under Siege, among other things. The film has a 6.9 rating on IMDb and a 3.1 out of 5 user rating on Letterboxd. The film grossed $94 million worldwide, so basically made its money back. But with all of that out of the way, Barry, what did you make of The Guardian?
So this is the second time that I've seen this film. I remember watching it back after it first came, like sort of a DVD rental back when it first came out, and watching it with a wife, and both thinking, oh, that's pretty good. I liked it okay, but it almost like faded from memory, other than just kind of knowing it was a Kevin Costner film. And this time around, I felt maybe less strongly about it overall. I do think it's good. My first thoughts about this was like, is there such a thing as like elevated paint by numbers? Like maybe they use some fancy colored pencils or a nice oil pastel. I don't know. Like this feels very paint by numbers, like every little bit as you go along. But it is done pretty well. And like I think it's like I said, like again, Kevin Costner is just like he's rescuing this thing on his back, like he's dragging it out of the the bottomless pit of whatever rocky cliffside that it was found on, because he's the only one, him and Clancy Brown, I guess, but Clancy Brown's so little on screen. It's just really Kevin Costner doing his best to keep this thing afloat.
Well, I had similar thoughts to yourself, because after watching this film, the sort of words that came to my mind were things like predictable, formulaic, by the numbers. But like yourself, I mean, it's a very watchable movie, and it's saved by the craft of the director, and it's saved by the craft of the actors, because there is a pretty deep bench of actors in this, and they all put in decent shifts of varying quality, but nobody is bad, and that's for sure. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward tale of heroism that we get here, and I kind of think if you're going to do something as formulaic like this, the characters need to be more engaging, or you need to find like a new wrinkle somewhere along the line in the plot, but this film just doesn't do. The characters are okay, but they're nothing more than that, and there aren't any new wrinkles in the plot here. And I don't know what you thought. I mean, you're quite lukewarm in it. I mean, because one thing, when I was looking online, people do seem to really. Like, I was looking at the comments under some YouTube videos, and there's certainly a group of people who really love this movie, and I was just kind of like wondering if it's a sort of massive cultural, generalization to sort of say that, these types of hymns to public service, work much better for Americans than they do for Brits, because we're a more cynical people, and if we put someone up on a pedestal, it's mostly so that we can throw rotten fruit at them, not so that we can thank them or laud them.
I maybe that's the case. I really thought about like this movie. I mean, obviously this is it's very Coast Guard centric, and it's kind of really painting the Coast Guard as this like. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a speech about when God, smotes houses from their foundations, we go out, and it's very, like they're the last line of defense, and it's like, okay, I wondered if this had the same effect on Coast Guard enrollment that like maybe Top Gun did back when it came out in the mid '80s. I don't know.
It's definitely a film that was made with the complete cooperation of the Coast Guard.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like there are times when they're filming some of like the pool scenes and some of the I guess the quasi action scenes at school. Like it feels almost like documentary like it's like they're just they're like looking at what's going on almost. But yeah, I think well, again, I think Kevin Costner has such a loyal fan base. There's probably a lot of comments from basically my mother's generation that can still figure out a way to work YouTube comments are on there, like lauding this. Like, look, this is a fine depiction of cinema. Or some grandma making their grandkid write it on the video. I can't imagine. Like I said, I did like this. I think it's, like I said, it's elevated paint by numbers. But like to really sit down and defend this as some like uber worthy cinema is pretty offensive. And like you said, the director, the name didn't strike a bell. I mean, I've seen I actually like Under Siege. I think it's a really good action movie. And The Fugitive is. I mean, it's in the culture. The one-armed man is like something people say probably on a fairly regular basis and just weird conversation. So he definitely has the pedigree. Like I said, nothing of it's bad. But to really hold this up is still kind of defended in the dark corner of the internet. I mean, I guess everything's defended to a degree, so it's not surprising. But yeah, this is it's okay overall. I will go back to one point that you said. Like I agree. I don't think it's brought down by any actors. I don't know if this was really the vehicle they were hoping was going to be to Ashton Kutcher. They were going to let Kevin Costner kind of help him leave the nest and kind of be the next great American movie star. But he overall he's okay. He's good as the cocky guy, the dude in the pool. But when he's trying to really portray emotion and sadness of you don't know what's happened to me, you just know it's pretty laughable. It's next to unwatchable. But other than that, like I said, other than that brief moment, even Ashton Kutcher cannot sink the same the mighty ocean. So
well, I think that sort of leads us perhaps nicely into the sort of next bit that I wanted to sort of touch on, which was, I mean, this film's got some pretty well-trodden plot arcs. We have Costner as the burnt-out veteran, and Kutcher as this cocksure rookie whose sort of blasé confidence is masking his inner pain, and the kind of master pupil dynamic between the two of them provides the central drama. So, how did you find their relationship in their film, and how did you find their characters?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Like, it is tried and true paths of what's going on here. The guy that's seen it all, done it all, and it's just kind of the one bad event. I mean, we see the flashback nightmares he's having of losing his friend from the helicopter accident, and then Ashton Kutcher, kind of reveals the tragedy in his past, and that allows them to kind of bond. And, I do think, it gets a little schmaltzy of like, hey, like, you're the best swimmer I've ever seen. Like, you can go faster, you can go further, like, you can save more lives. The funny thing about a movie like this, I guess for me, one thing that I took away from it is, I think it really briefly touches on like things like PTSD of like Kevin Costner and even Ashton Kutcher to a degree. And it's something that I guess me, like, this time around thinking of like, I guess I never thought of like for just jobs like that. And then there's other movies that's come out this year. Like, did you watch, not to deviate too quickly, but that Angelina Jolie like firefighter movie where she's like a smoke jumper or whatever, like in California? It came out earlier this year.
No, didn't see that.
No. Okay, well, it's okay, but like even in that one, like, she has like this, PTSD because like people have obviously died. She's trying to fight these fires and things. And it is one of these things. Like, I guess I never thought of like like so many of these jobs really do have like this really high level of stress that could probably impact you like over the long haul. Like, I just I think is like. To get silly, I guess, or serious for silliness for a second, like just like the mental health issue that goes around the globe. It is interesting to see like just the tiniest little snippets of this in this movie, and it is just this kind of silly paint by numbers action. Let's get together, but like I think there are some serious tones there that like you could really pull out of this and be like, hey, look, this affects everybody at every job at every level. It's interesting, but it works for their character development. It works for the relationship to get to the end. I think, like. It is just, oh god, the Kevin Costner Ashton Kutcher thing is so cliche. Like, it's just like they cannot get along and then they're best of friends. But it's but it's believable. Somehow it's still believable. Like, it's
Well, I think it's believable because it's so familiar. And I think you made a very good point when you say there's snippets of more interesting things there. And because I don't think they quite nail the characters. And Kutcher, I don't quite think they painted him properly because he comes over as this sort of cocky, flashy, self-centered. That's what we're meant to sort of think of him. He's the sort of high school swim champ. But as we sort of later learn in the film that actually he's motivated to join the Coast Guard by like a personal tragedy that he actually he doesn't actually need to take that burden of that tragedy on himself, but he's chosen to do that. So I don't quite understand like that when you find that out about him, the persona that he's had up to then in the movie doesn't sort of make sense, because if he is driven by his guilt and regret, then why is he sort of behaving in this brash way? And it feels like they've taken they've sort of like got their character types a little bit sort of mixed up. They've bolted the sort of one out of Top Gun together with one in a different movie, and they then they sort of end up with confused motivations for him.
No, that's a really good point too. Like, he is very brash and cocky. I think the one thing, like you said, that they don't do a great job of developing the characters other than just kind of generic terms. There's one point in this movie where like Kevin Costner, I'm sorry, Kevin Costner, but Kutcher's having his big reveal. He's kind of like talking with Costner, and about like it comes up that like like he's from this really tiny small town, and like everybody knows his name, and everybody blames him for this tragedy that befell this group. And now, and I think that's one of the things that I think that's probably slightly accurate to a real, in a real world scenario where like, hey, like everyone in this small town knows everyone's name, and then suddenly someone does something and everyone thinks differently of that one person. But if you're not from a small town, I think it's lost on people. Like if you don't have that experience of like, what's it like to really only, have 400 people in your town, and then kind of be, so like there's elements there that like maybe have some like, real life accuracy to them, but like if you've never experienced it at all, it's just, and it's only done in exposition because we never see Ashton Kutcher from his hometown. We only see the brash guy swimming fast in the pool. Like there's no idea of sort of what's going on. I do think you probably needed some sort of maybe it's on the cutting room floor, but letters home from mom of like, no one blames you. Like there really
Yeah.
needs to be a little bit something else of like, hey, like this isn't your fault, because to get it out in like 2 minutes of dialogue, is hard. It's hard to really kind of, bring me around on either side really of Ashton Kutcher, because I never really hated him. Like, I mean, look, there's always brash young punks that are trying to take out the old guys. That's as common as the other things we've seen in this movie.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, there's a line in the film. I mean, I'm probably overanalyzing The Guardian. There's probably people involved in making the film who probably haven't thought as much about this line of dialogue than I have. But there's a line in the film where he's out on a date with this girl that he's romancing, and she asks him, I think, why did you get out of that town? And he makes a flippant joke about, I killed a couple of guys and I had to get out of Dodge, and he says it as a joke. And that is, I think, later on in the film, again, when you find out what his motivations are, that line reading is wrong. Like, there needs to be a bit of an edge to that line reading that makes you think that he sort of delivers it as a joke, but there's something that makes you think, ooh, maybe that wasn't all a joke, and it just comes when he, as I say, he just delivers it in a very sort of, glib, facile way. And yeah, it again just sort of speaks to this idea I have that they haven't quite sort of nailed down his character. And I think it's an issue that they actually have a little bit with Costner as well, because again, it's this trope of the burnt out veteran. He's seen too much, and he's packed off to this Coast Guard school because his boss tells him he needs to heal. But we don't actually see Costner being in any kind of difficulty at that moment in the film. It's only like an hour into the film that they suddenly realize, oh yeah, we need to set up this idea that he's struggling, and there's this scene where we see him popping pills, and he's sort of making drunken phone calls to his ex-wife and stuff. And it's kind of felt like that scene. It felt like that we needed that scene sort of like in the first 15 minutes, so we then understand sort of like where Kevin Costner is at his life and why he's being packed off to this Coast Guard school.
I don't disagree with either of your points there, really. Like, I remember the exact line you're talking about with Ashton Kutcher of, basically him joking about killing a couple of guys. And you're right. I mean, it's almost told as like something you would like believe say to a girl, like, I don't want to get into my past. I killed a couple of guys. Like, it's just, but never really would that have been the case. I don't think, when you would have said it quite like that. And they do really need to figure that out. The other thing too that I found interesting with the girl with the relationship, and just this is like this weird Ashton Kutcher character note of like how he has the tattoo of the number 2 on his back on his shoulder, and he kind of mentions that, that's there so the guy in the lane next to me can know what place he's finishing in. Like, most of like lanes in a pool are like 8 lanes wide, right? I mean, the guy that's finishing in second could be 3 lanes over. Like, he would never see. I don't know. It's just like it's like he's cocky enough. We don't need the 2. Like, that's, I guess, was just my big complaint. Like, that's really ridiculous. That's a long way to go to get to where we're trying to be. But you're right too about Kevin Costner. I mean, he's basically like a sad country song at this point. Like, when his wife's moving out at the beginning, like, she should have just taken the chair to just put the final nail in the coffin. Like, put the chair in the truck. And, come on, dog, get in the front seat. We're going. Like, we're leaving him here literally with maybe the ice cube trays in the freezer. Like, that's it. Like, he's, like, and of course, as he's begging her not to stay, the beeper's going off because, gosh darn it, I'm the only rescue swimmer for a million miles, and I've got to go back out. Like, that was my big takeaway. It's like, does this guy never get it? Like, at some point, like hypothermia, you need to recover a little bit. Exactly. You just can't be in the water for weeks on end. Like, what is going on? I just maybe I don't know.
He needs to get onto his union rep to speak to Clancy Brown about his kind of the shifts that he's got going on.
His use rate is way out of whack. Like, he needs to take some vacation or something because I don't know. Like, it's and it also this is such a funny, like, a silly thing, but like, I don't know if I really want my rescue swimmers having to get paged back in. Like, I mean, if I'm sinking in a boat, like, there's 20 minutes back to base, a 30-minute helicopter. Like, there's no way, people. Like, you need to shouldn't he be close by at all times if you really need him that much? You shouldn't let him out amongst the people meandering about. I don't know. It's like, they really need to do something other than just his wife leaving him, and then, like you said, much later on we see him popping pills. But I also think that the thing with the pills, they probably didn't want to like cast any like he's messed up and that's what got the guy killed. It really is just it was sort of an accident that's beyond his help, like much like Ashton Kutcher's background, right? Like like this really wasn't your fault, but it still haunts you and it's still all these other things. So maybe that's why they don't want to, showcase any other particular problems other than Randall and Kevin Costner. We don't want to put any chinks in the armor before we have the big takedown.
Well, let's talk about the performances that we get here. We've already spoken, a little bit about Kevin Costner's character, but what do we actually sort of think about his performance here? You said earlier you felt that he was dragging this film along. He was carrying it on his back. I mean, is that your? Were you impressed as much by the heroism of Costner's performance as the daring do he was performing in the film as his character?
I really was. I mean, like him and Ashton Kutcher are 90% of the film. Ashton Kutcher and the girl are another 5%, and then everyone else in the movie gets like maybe 5% of sprinklings with one of those two characters. I mean, is there ever a scene where we don't have Costner or Kutcher on screen?
I don't.
Maybe a couple of shots of like the command center, but at that point in time, like Costner's like basically about to jump in the water, so it's not really like he's not even being talked about. Like he's him or Kutcher are always in the room. Or at least, in thought. So that's, I really do think Costner, he does drag it along. I think I believe his stress and PTSD, he appears of the right age to be like, hey, you're kind of aging out of this ability to be, the guy diving out of a helicopter and swimming, in 30-degree water for long periods of time, apparently over and over and again to the point to where your wife is leaving you. And then for Kutcher, like I said, I don't know. Like I think the brash stuff is fine. I think when he's trying to charm the girl, he works. But like when there's one scene where he was really trying to get like, and I mean he like kind of almost locks up. Like I mean I could believe that'd be a response of like I can't really get my emotions out. But it just that's where you need the big Nicolas Cage moment. You need the big blow up of a range of emotions there, and you just don't quite get it. Like he's just kind of almost like a child there that's sitting there crying and scared and just it's a bit rough. But aside from that, I think it's good. And even when he has to take charge towards the end, like when he has to kind of get Kevin Costner like, hey, let's lock it up, let's get back to the helicopter. Like he's able to kind of switch from student to teacher a little bit. Like that part's believable, somewhat. Yeah. It's not.
That big emotional scene, Kutcher. Yeah, he doesn't really land that scene at all, and it's also like Costner has an emotional moment in that same scene, and you can see the difference in quality of the two actors, because Costner is so much better in that scene than Kutcher, and I think it speaks to kind of some of Costner's sort of abilities as an actor, which he whatever you can describe him as one note, but it is a very good note, because he can do earnestness and sincerity in a very believable way, which not every actor can do, and actually I think very few of them can do it very well. I mean, he kind of reminds me of in that his ability to kind of be believable in those types of moments of like maybe somebody like James Stewart. Or Glenn Ford, which is an interesting, because like Kevin Costner, he played Superman's dad as well, so kind of an interesting comparison there. But he's good in these sort of roles that require someone sort of blue collar with a bit of folksy wisdom that he can sort of dispense to somebody along the way, and that's the kind of role that he gets here. It's a pretty one-dimensional role, and if there are any shades to the character, it's because of Costner's acting ability, not because of something that was on the page of the script.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, like he really does, like he's almost like this little perfect mixture of like he's a good-looking guy, but he's not so handsome where you're like, it's distracting. He's not like a Brad Pitt or somebody like that. But he can be like, like he can deliver a line that's a little bit funny. There's a scene in a bar fight, you believe he's capable of handling himself. Like it's just every little bit that he has to portray. Like it is believable. And then like you said, the sincerity of what he's doing, and it always just comes across, and it's never like I just never find myself rolling my eyes with his dialogue or what he's trying to portray in a specific moment, like in this film or others. Like, I mean, there's a really good scene, I think, where he's like got the kids in like that pool, and like he's dumped all this ice in there, and like he's trying to show them like hypothermia, and like it's almost like he's like, can I get back to it? Though the way he just delivers those line readings is like, yeah, like like I believe what's going on here. Like I believe this is this salty guy who's like, hey, look, like you can learn about hypothermia in the classroom, but if you feel it, like you're gonna know what it is. It's never, like I said, that's a paint by numbers piece, but like he's able to just gracefully carry it like over the finish line, scene to scene to scene of what they're doing. And I think that all rests on his shoulders. Like he's just doing such a good job.
Well, I want to talk about the ending of this film, and if you care about spoilers, probably you should sort of skip ahead here. But the ending of this film, Barry, I want to sort of run like a theory past you here, and it's basically, does Ashton Kutcher kill Costner? Now, not deliberately. I am not saying that he drops him. I'm not saying that he drops him. But basically, let's look at what Kutcher has done to Costner in this. Like Costner by this point, his best friend is dead. He's divorced from his wife. Kutcher has now taken all of his swim school records, and the only thing Costner has got left in his life is that grip record of like holding somebody on a line from a helicopter for 20 minutes and carrying them back to base. And that's the only thing Costner's got left in his life. And so I'm thinking that that's why Costner basically slips out of that glove at the end of the film, because he just thought, like, God damn it, I can't live out the rest of my days knowing that Kutcher has bested me in every area.
That's a really solid point there. I didn't think about that, but you may be onto something, because he's definitely he's taken everything from him. His wife's left. Like the only thing he has left is which, by the way, that story's delivered so poorly in the bar, like earlier on. Like you were talking about like acting as we go along. Like every other character is pretty bad in their portrayals, but maybe you're spot on there. Maybe Kutcher does send him. And honestly too, like I think Kutcher's just like his hard charging blaseness of like, no, I'm gonna stay here on the boat. It's like, dude, it's your first solo mission. Maybe not let someone drown, but like, where is he? Oh, like he's in the part of the boat that's already underwater. Yeah, like, we should probably leave then. Like I don't know, like Kevin Costner, he's finally out, man. You drag him back in only to see his quick demise. It's pretty sad. And also, why don't they send a C-130 to like drop like the boat out again? Like why can't they, like what's going on there? Like it's
Well, that, Barry, is another big question I had about this movie, because we've mentioned the fact that Clancy Brown's his scheduling of people's shifts is appalling in this movie. Nobody's ever like off duty for 5 minutes, and Clancy Brown's got this Coast Guard control center that looks sophisticated enough that you could sort of run World War III from it. But at crucial points in the movie, like they haven't got another helicopter available. The only other one's 4 hours flight time away. He has to, at the end of the film, he has to send out Kevin Costner, who is now no longer a Coast Guard rescue swimmer. He has to go out in a helicopter to try and get Kutcher out of this boat that he's trapped in. We've got defective equipment on that helicopter with the winch line. I mean, America is a notoriously litigious country. I mean, if I was Kevin Costner's, widow here, I would be bringing like corporate manslaughter action against the U.S. Coast Guard here. I mean,
See, as a former service member, you actually signed documentation saying you cannot sue the U.S. government for anything that befalls you. So they cover their bases right out the gate. Like that's like the second form you sign. Like, hey, look, if you die in the line of duty, whether it be through action or faulty equipment, that is not on us. No, you're absolutely right. They and not only that, but Clancy Brown, like he has to don his flight suit. Like. I think that's the big takeaway from this movie. Like, one, Ashton Kutcher killed Kevin Costner by stealing everything from him. And two, Clancy Brown should probably be fired because he's the worst manager of all time. Like, he only lets Kevin Costner go on swims. And, he's like, we don't have any more pilots. Like, what are you talking about, man? Like, is everyone home on vacation? Like, It's just me and the guy that's mopping the floors that are going out. Like, it's really poorly handled and mismanaged, I think. He's, like he's just grabbing people. Do you know how to swim? Let's go. We've got to get, oh, you're retired. Come. It's pretty problematic. It's not an ideal situation that he's doing there. Like, you need a request for more people, or, to tell people like, hey, look, you're going to go out on your boat, but like, we don't have any helicopters. So if there's an accident, like, you're just going to drown. Like, you need to like kind of disclose that information right away. 'Cause, you're only doing more harm than good at this point.
Well, I look forward to The Guardian 2, which will be basically a kind of courtroom drama as the kind of death of Kevin Costner is litigated between different parties. So I think
The Guardian 2 with a mix of A Few Good Men, like Clancy Brown on the stand. I'm here for that. Like, sign me up today.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be looking at the exploding helicopter action.
Hello, you lot. I'm Daryl.
And I'm Ben.
And we're Sudden Double Deep, the Triple Bill title podcast. Each fortnight, we watch 3 films linked by a word in the title. For example,
Sudden Impact, Double Impact, and Deep Impact.
Or
Young Frankenstein, Young Guns, and While We're Young.
Or
Four Flies on Grey Velvet, Blue Velvet, and Velvet Goldmine.
You get the idea. If you're into finding links between weird triple bills, taking pot shots at terrible movies, and listening to 2 film fanatics bicker, then we've the show for you. Search for Sudden Double Deep on iTunes, Stitcher, and all good podcatchers, and find us on Twitter at SDD Film Podcast. That's SDD Film Podcast. Thank you very much.
We're back, and now we're looking at the exploding helicopter action. This occurs during the opening action set piece, and you don't need the weather eye of an old sea captain to forecast there's an explosion brewing for the featured helicopter. Amid a massive storm, the Kevster is flown out to help the crew of a cargo ship which has started to sink. Kevin dives into the sea to help the sailors who've abandoned ship, but just before they can be winched to safety in the helicopter, a huge wave flings a piece of wreckage from the stricken ship into its tail rotor. Out of control, the chopper, which is a Sikorsky HH-60 Jayhawk, spins round before crashing into the sea and exploding. Barry, what did you make of the chopper fireball action?
Well, I'll be honest, when you kind of invited me back onto the show, I'd seen The Guardian before, and I was like, I don't remember an exploding helicopter in it. Like, I was like, when does that occur? And to see it in the first 5 minutes, I was like, wow, like, they just get this out of the way pretty quickly. I thought it honestly was well used. This has to be one of the few times that it's like exploding helicopter by a shipping container, like rogue shipping container. Like, that definitely caught me off guard of like, well, how are they going to blow this helicopter up? Oh, it's a rogue wave, and debris is going to take it out. Like, that was also kind of surprising. So all those elements involved there, I thought overall it was pretty good. You get the great fire scene through the cabin, everywhere, like it all, it's all just I think, for exploding helicopter, this is even above the paint by numbers. This is this is high museum praise level worthy of exploding helicopters. This is one of the greats, much like Kevin Costner himself.
Well, I'm inclined to agree with you, because I thought this is a great sequence, definitely for me, and certainly as an exploding helicopter fan, the highlight of the movie, because you see the stricken helicopter, it's got its tail rotor sort of knocked out, and so you've got a lot. We're then in the cockpit of the helicopter with the the pilots flailing at the controls, alarms are going off. I always love that particular sort of moment in a crash scene. Then we get a very spectacular fireball when the helicopter does crash into the waves. Not really sure why it explodes on contact with seawater, but it's for dramatic effect. I'm not going to criticize them for that. But then you get the helicopter sort of flipping over, and then like some sort of like the tail of the helicopter nearly hits Kevin Costner, who's in the water, and then as a little final coup de grace, as the helicopter sort of sinks below the waves, the rescue cage in which Kevin's just put a survivor from the ship that he's just rescued, the rescue cage is then pulled down underneath the waves to the sort of despairing looks of Kevin Costner. So I thought that was a really sweet little final touch of kind of poignancy at the end of that sequence. So I mean, there was loads going on there. I thought it was really well executed. I loved this scene.
No, it really is good, and like you said, that final little bit of like hey, it's gonna drag, and that's also like, I mean, they portray that as like this is like a teenager, like I mean, like he's talking to his dad on the boat, like he's gonna be okay, like you know what I'm saying, like he's definitely a younger character. So this movie's like it's killing kids, it's you know, like you know, they're going to great lengths to really kind of amp up the turmoil that Kevin Costner's going through, and that's pretty you get a lot of bang for the buck. You know, you get obviously the massive explosion, the Kevin Costner just avoiding death, plus like you said, the final little bit of the one final death of like the anchor being drugged down to the bottom of the sea, and like that's, and like it just, like the worst part is that like it pulls him across the water. It's just not even straight down. It's almost like an amusement park ride. Yeah, like you got to just and then down. It's like, oh man, that's pretty brutal. But I completely agree. I think it's, of the ones that I've seen in film, of the ones that I've done on this show, like this one definitely stands, it stands up. Like I think it's quite impressive.
Well, I am pleased that you enjoyed it, Barry. I'm glad indeed. Well, I think that probably just about wraps things up for this show. Barry, thanks for joining me once again. Do you want to take a moment to plug your show and tell people where they can, listen to all the previous episodes of Tru Bromance? Because you're on a bit of a break at the moment.
Yeah, we've kind of had a bit of an extended hiatus. I mean, like, the Tru Bromance Film Podcast, we have quite a large catalog of back issues that you can go and listen to, but we are working on our way to try to like create a new schedule and kind of start getting back out there and recording some more shows. But like we have all the normal things like Twitter, Tru Bromance Film, Facebook page. But honestly, don't go to Facebook. I don't know if anything's ever been done with that thing in the past, even when we were doing the show. But but like you can find us on iTunes or anywhere you get your podcast. And like I said, we're working to start getting back into it and talking about movies, and maybe talking about Kevin Costner again as the motivation that we needed to kind of come back. So.
As always, don't forget to check out the Exploding Helicopter website at explodinghelicopter.com. If you can rate, review, or retweet us, we'd be very, very grateful. We'll be back soon, but until then, keep watching the skies for those exploding helicopters.
This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.
With the distinct possibility of dying, slow, cold, and alone, somewhere in the vast sea. However, you also get the chance to save lives. And there is no greater calling in the world than that. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to A School. Are there any questions?
Captain, Airman Fisher. Just have one question. That guy who holds all them records, is he still alive?
Why do you ask?
I just thought you ought to let him know I'm about to knock his name off that board.
Really? Why don't you let him know yourself? He's standing right behind you in the back of the room.